Welcome to Dental Braincrafts. I'm your host, Chelsea Myers, and today I'm joined with Stuart Oberman, the president and founder of Oberman Law Firm. Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Absolute pleasure to be on your show.
It's so good to have you. So Stuart and I met a couple of years ago virtually. We've been attending and serving at the same event for a couple of years, and he's just got so much knowledge and actually some really funny stories. And so I'm really excited to have you here today. And actually, if you just want to give a little background on yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, first off, thanks for having me. I mean, what you do in the industry is just amazing. And your reputation far precedes you, which is a very good thing. You just do the contacts you meet and the resources you have just really are an absolute compliment to what you do. But no, we Urbana Law Firm, we love our dental guys. We are very, very fortunate. We have clients in 40 states. We do everything from mergers, acquisitions, compliance, HIPAA, OSHA. Last year, we did, I think, 135, 140 closings, real estate transactions, dental transactions and professional transactions. It was like 350 million, which was that's not a bad year for closing. But we just really enjoy our dental guys. We have a wide variety of information. We have attorneys in Florida, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Atlanta area. So we're looking to expand out, and we just have a lot of resources. Really just love to share with our dental guys. So there we go.
That's really great. And thank you for your compliments. And actually, I'll have to put some back your way, because people that I talk to just love working with you. Not only is it offer a lot of valuable experience and knowledge in the legal realm, but they really enjoy working with you and your team. And so I think that's really important, particularly when we're talking about something as precious as our business and our livelihoods and the things we're trying to do.
Well, it's like your reputation. You could put out whatever you want to, but at the end of the day, it's really shaking hands and making sure the clients are taken care of, just like you do every day. So now we appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Well, let's get into it. So tell me, we were joking beforehand that this could be like a 6-day podcast, but tell me, in your experience, what are some of the biggest problems facing a dental practice, whether that's a solo practice, a group practice, regardless of the goals? Talk about the problems.
It's interesting whether you have a practice that's making $350,000 or you have a practice that's, $22 million. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there's a couple of realms of HR, but HR is an absolute disaster. And that's sort of an understatement. I mean, we could literally spend 6 days on this topic, but it really is, they're not set up to where they should be. And we see a lot of things. So we may be a little bit more fortunate where we can really drill down on a lot of things that our doctors aren't doing. But really, the whole COVID thing really set things off, and we're seeing a great resignation and the great, I forgot what they call it now, but where you just sort of float around until you're fired on a particular job. I forgot that.
Quiet quitting.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. I knew you had the buzzword, quiet quitting. So back in our day, my day, I'm much older than you. We just called it being lazy. So now they got different words for it. But I would say hiring, firing is just is a disaster. We have doctors that are wanting to hire convicted felons because they just can't find anybody. And we sort of talk them off the ledge. And we're talking about, oral surgeons that, are just handling a lot of things on a lot of daily basis. So, they're not doing their due diligence. The background checks, which are becoming harder and harder depending on the state region to do. There's a lot of restrictions coming on that particular forefront. But, for $100, you can find out a lot about your employees. You can find a lot about your employees going online before you hire them. So, then another thing we're seeing a bad problem with is offer letters. So, our offer letters are not right. So I guess that's a really great term, a legal term, not right. So they're actually becoming contracts. They're getting our doctors in trouble as far as exempt, non-exempt. They're setting things up for themselves down the road for the hiring problems, firing problems. Either they're not doing them at all. They don't set up probationary periods in these offer letters. So if our doctors are lucky to get offer letters and do them, it's great. But I would say 80% of the time they're not correct. They're having a lot of problems with offer letters. Matter of fact, we just put out an article about offer letters. We're going to on our Advisor Insights newsletters. So that's becoming a very, doctors don't know how to do it. What happens is we have some of our practices are turnovers of 70, 80, 90% on a yearly basis. So they're sort of going along as, they're on the fly is what's happening, and they're having a lot of questions, a lot of concerns. Another thing that is a disaster in our dental practices is there's no personnel records. They want to fire, they want to hire, they want to terminate, but there's no records, there's no cause. They're not keeping track of things. There's no probationary periods. There's just no track record. So what happens is there's no track record. Employee manuals are a disaster. Usually they're either 15 or 20 pages, and they don't really understand what it takes to have an employee manual. They lose a lot of leverage when it comes to Department of Labor, Department of Revenue, audits, exempt, not exempt, contract and no contractors. One of the biggest things we're running into, and this is sort of scary, is that job interviews. There are some really areas you just need to stay away from. Race, color, creed, sex, origin, marriage, where you live, those kind of things, and it's becoming tighter. The EEOC is actually encouraging doctors to have a track record of what the interview process is, because they're seeing an increase now on retaliation claims for not hiring, EEOC issues. So that's a huge problem. Our doctor staff are not trained on interview questions. So another thing we're seeing is getting our doctors into trouble is that their conversations are being recorded during these interview processes. So that has its own set of complications. Not only do you not have a particular person who's trained to ask questions, now they're asking the wrong questions that are a violation of probably Title VII, and they're being recorded. So you've got all kind of issues. Without going on a tangent, our doctors don't realize that also they're being recorded in their offices for their staff. Huddles are being recorded now. Conferences are being recorded. So they're making track records of these particular events, if you will. So those, it's just the overall hiring and firing is not documented. It's just, it sets a recipe for disaster. Now, what's happening is we're seeing a lot of pushback on due diligence. Drug testing is becoming a problem. So we're seeing a lot of issues regarding marijuana. Now, what do? You go to Colorado, you go to California, where states are legal. You come back and you're drug tested. So then what happens? As far as that goes, a lot of our doctors are leaving the cannabis, marijuana off the panels. So they're checking for everything else but marijuana because they don't want to know about it. And then a couple, that's the hiring and firing. So now you got.
Let's stay there for a minute if we could. No,
which one? I would just, I speak fast. I'm sorry.
You're saying a lot of really important things. So on my end, when I'm talking about hiring and firing, we're getting really clear on what is it that you're even hiring for, which is, I think, probably tied to some of those questions that don't need to be asked, shouldn't be asked. They're just trying to figure out, is this a good candidate for my practice and organization? And the answer is, it depends on what you want.
Right. Right.
But by having, that's the coaching, the professional coaching aspect. And then having that legal component, once we know what it is that we're after, we can figure out how to design those questions in a way that really tailors themselves to finding that candidate as quickly as possible, while mitigating all of those other risks that you're talking about.
Well, our doctors need you very early. They don't get the consultants involved early enough. They sort of fly off the handle. And, so you talk about aid, you talk about citizenship, you talk about criminal records are being restricted now, disabilities, genders, national origin, parental status is now being, addressed. Where you live, you can't, in some places, you can't ask where you live because it's grounds for discrimination, discriminatory, issues regarding where you live. Religion is just off the record, period. You can't even touch that. So our guys really are not trained, and what they're not doing, and a lot of our good practices, and you get involved early enough where you say, hey, look, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. You got to follow this doc, you got to follow that. So that's why they need to get, people like you and the consultants involved early to figure out this process, because they're not doing it right. And then we can even clean them up, which is rough enough.
Right.
Rough enough. And, then you jump into the whole internal HR process, where I know this is, this is another, this is like another, 5-hour CE course, and I'm sure you got stories. You just, that's a 5-day task also. But, and you see it, employee manuals are outdated. They're not in compliance. Right. And I'll speak, and I know you do a lot. And it's like, how many pages are employee manual? 20 pages. Okay, shred it. It's gone. It's garbage. Just shred it. Just don't even just shred it. And you got EEOC issues now regarding, harassment policies, which is huge in the dental practice. I mean, the statistics that are out there for the EEOC and harassment are amazing. They also list, the 5 states. I think Georgia's in probably the top 3 or 4, if not higher. So you've got EEOC issues. There's no policies in place a lot of times that outline what is proper conduct. Because if you get 30 people in an office, you're going to get 30 opinions as to what's proper conduct. And if you don't tell people what is proper, they don't know. And then then they mess up and they get problems, and it comes back to the doctor because they didn't listen to the attorney. They didn't listen to the people like you, and are in there early enough and trying to prevent all this. And one of the biggest issues now the EEOC is talking about is pregnancy. It's no secret that most of the offices have female employees. It's what it is. The whole demographic change. The law schools are changing. Everything's changing, and our doctors aren't keeping track of that. So if you ask a doctor, are you familiar with the Pregnancy Act? You might as well look like you just got 6 heads, because they have no idea. And to say the least, the Pregnancy Act. What is that? Well, if you got 15 or more employees, you got some problems. You got to set some things up and do these. One thing we're running into a lot these days is the violation of the National Labor Relations Board, where our doctors are like, you can't ever talk about pay. You can't talk about pay to anyone. You can't tell a person what you make. Well, that's a problem, because they can't. Now you can restrict it in certain ways, but if you tell an employee you can't talk about your pay to anyone, anytime, anywhere, because you're going to be fired if you don't, that's a huge problem. National Labor Relations Board. And then you get into the whole federal issue. California is just passing I believe it's passed a bill. It passed 4 key bills, and I got to take a look at that. This came across my desk yesterday. One of them is that when you post a job, you've got to list out a certain criteria, a pay structure in California. You're going to see that probably coming across the board. So, because what happens in California goes to Colorado, comes over to Mississippi, comes down everywhere else.
Right.
Travel with the world we live in. And then you get into, there's, non-solicitation policies. They need the social media policies, cell phone policies. They're just not regulating these guys internally. And when they leave, it's a disaster. And I knew I just do a lot of stuff at you.
Well, here's what I'm still hanging on to. And if I'm hanging on to it, I know other people are too. But you talk about, people are recording their huddles, people are recording their interactions. And so let's say you've got that 12-page employee manual that doesn't cover anything.
On a good day. And,
people are looking for forget the quiet quitting. They're looking for a very overt reason to rightfully leave your place of business, right? And so they're recording things. What does that look like? How does someone like you step in and help clean up that mess if they're like, well, they've got this 20-second recording here and this 5-second recording there? It looks suspicious, particularly when you've not clarified the expectations in advance in your infrastructure. You got
to get rid of those problems quickly. That's just the key. You got to get rid of them, because if you let it hang around, and it's my background is actually from the insurance claim side to in-house counsel side. And the old saying was, closed claim's a happy claim. So you get those cases closed, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a little bit because the doctors didn't do things correctly. But when you got employees that got that kind of ammo, you need to get them out quickly. But but the way there's easy ways to prevent these things. Get your employee manual in place. Get your non-solicitation. Get your cell phone policies in place. Get your social media things in place where they can't go out and record these. They can't put them online. Doctors, things are going online now in conversations. So there's things they can do, but those kind of employees have ulterior motives, and it's usually money. So again, you're gonna have to open up your checkbook a little bit, and it's going to hurt because you didn't do it right the first time. So
how in depth does it need to be? So, I mean, I can Google search right now and pull up some templates for employee manuals, or I can just hire someone to do it right based on what I'm trying to build in my organization.
I would say in the dental side, if you're less than 100 pages, you got a problem. Okay. I mean, that sounds like a lot, but when you're dealing with, various laws, you're dealing with EEOC issues, you're dealing with National Labor Relations, the Pregnancy Act, Department of Labor, Department of Revenue, you really need, and job descriptions, bereavement periods, and because when laws change, you got to really update your manual. I would say, you need to take a look at this stuff every 2-3 years, because it's absolutely obsolete, or outdated, excuse me. But I would say, I would say anything less than, I hate to put a number on it, but anywhere between anything less than 75 or 80, it's rough. I mean, it's just rough. Now, I got a question for you now. I got a question for you. So you're in a lot of practices. So how many practices do you now? You work with the top of the top. So this question may be skewed because you work with the very best. So, but how many of your practices actually have even an employee manual or any kind of internal guidance?
Well, that's why I was asking that question, because I mean, obviously your more established organizations, there's definitely a system in place for that, but people are all over the board, and it really truly is easy to just pull up something on Google. But my thought process is, rather than trying to sift, by the time you read through those 99 pages to see, is that actually going to cover me, and pay the $20, $50, whatever it is, maybe it's free, you can just pull a PDF off. It seems like it's time better spent and investment better made to go to someone who can understand what it is you're trying to do and make sure that you're covered. And, we've talked about the scary side of it a little bit, but let's say you've got a good team. You got a good team of good people, and they just want to know, what is the expectation? How do I succeed in your organization? And when you put that in place as the doctor, you're able to scale that business as far as you want to go, as long as those systems are put in place from the beginning. Yeah.
And you see that the practices you run in, the ones that are organized can scale. The ones that, are not organized, they just don't get off that ground. They just don't get there. So you're right. They got to have that foundation. They got to have people like you that really can get down there and drill it down and get them off the ground. So no, I would agree with that. And it's not, it's not that our guys don't, what happened is they give it to the office manager, and the office manager is wearing 17 hats, and they spend 6 months doing it. And they're just, it's just a numbers game. They just don't have the time to do it. So it is difficult. It is difficult. And I'm sure you see that too. It is difficult.
So is it, from a legal perspective, is it good enough as long as I have that document and people have access to it? Is that all that's necessary, or talk to me more about how do I ensure that everyone knows everything they need to know to be held accountable to it?
I think one, you got to make sure if it's readily accessible, which it should be, everyone signs an acknowledgement that says they read it or they have it. I mean,
Right.
I can't tell you how many documents and problems develop because they don't sign the document. Like doctors don't get things signed.
Right.
They lose a document. So you put them on the portal, internal portal, and everything's accessible. And then you have everyone acknowledges that they have it. And then, when you hire someone, you got an onboarding process where you have all that articulated out and everyone signs it. It's a very easy process. There's absolutely no reason why, employees should not do this. And look, we've got companies that are $500 million companies that don't do this. We got companies that are $500 million and they just hired an HR person, a full-time HR person this past year.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, it happens. But you just got to get it. You got to get it internalized.
And then each time there's an update, does that require an additional signature or just a notification?
Probably additional signature that they have. You've revised it. Here's the change. And if it's affecting you, then you probably want to sign another acknowledgement.
Yeah. This is somewhat selfish, actually, that I'm asking these questions, but this is very useful.
Just far away. Or just like your old friend, hey doc, my brother's got a bad back. What can you help my brother with the bad back? I got a question for you from my brother. It's
right,
I get it.
Yeah, asking for a friend.
Yeah, a friend of mine, back in Mississippi, right? So I get it.
All right, keep going. What else you got for me?
Oh gosh, then from a clinical standpoint, we jump into the clinical side now. I think that our doctors don't understand how sophisticated the patients are now. They are more demanding. They have to have better risk management on the medical clinical side. They do. They just have to. And they don't understand that. It's like the malpractice side is, I don't know if there's a whole lot of malpractice in dentistry that's worth millions of dollars, but there are becoming cottage industries of law firms that all they do is sue dentists, and we know who they are. They get the affidavits. We got one this morning that it was an expert affidavit from a expert witness company that indicated our doctor, committed malpractice. So, that, and it is what it is. But from that standpoint, they don't understand what they need to do. Our doctors from the clinical side do not do a good job maintaining confidentiality. They send stuff they shouldn't. They send stuff improper ways, such as electronically, where there's no permission. They don't deal with the right people. They're talking to the ex-spouses. They're talking to their grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles. So there's not a whole lot of confidentiality. One thing our doctors also do not do, and I had a really fortunate time to speak on this particular matter to the residents down at the MCG, Medical College of Georgia. There's no follow-up on appointments. There's no follow-up on misappointments. They're not documented. These things, you've got to document the clinical side of why there's a misappointment, why they didn't follow up. How does that affect the treatment? Our doctors don't understand that. They don't understand that. And they've got to do that. One thing they don't do well is manage calls after hours. Maybe they're responsive, but things that it doesn't get to the files.
So talk to me more about that. So you're saying that we've got savvy patients who know what they're doing, what they can expect, and what can happen if they don't get their expectations met. Now tie that to not documenting missed appointments and how that relates to treatment or
what happens is, patients are busy. They got other things they need to do in their life, and you have certain patients are just not going to be cooperative. So all of a sudden you got this treatment that goes on and on and on, and patients keep missing appointments. They don't show up, whatever it is. And now you've got a care issue, because what happens is if you don't document all that, it goes back to the doctor. that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Well, I called the patient 97 times. Well, there's nothing in the file that indicates that. And the patients will swear, you'll get, the patients will get text messages and calls and emails, whatever it is. And they'll swear you never contacted them. So, and all that goes back to the clinical side is how does that affect the standard and quality of care? Do you keep chasing a patient for 6 months until they show up and they got temporaries in, or, they got temporary crowns in, those kind of things. So they don't manage that very well, and they have to, because all those things are a defense to malpractice claims. And one thing, dentistry is it's becoming so specialized in areas. There's not communication between the doctors and the referring doctors. There's no communication. It's bad communication. It really is.
Yeah.
The referring doctors are trying to not let the specialist is trying to cover for the GP that didn't messed up because they didn't do an implant right, because they went to a course and paid $3,000 for 3 days worth of implants. Now they're an expert. So the referral sources are not kept in touch very good, and it comes back to the file again. And then one thing that is an absolute disaster is how our guys, and this is all the clinical side, how our guys handle negative reviews. They don't handle negative reviews well.
Talk about that, because I actually just had someone bring that up in a session recently.
So from our standpoint, we see both ends. We see both ends where if we get involved early, what happens, and if we get involved too late, what happens. So if we get involved too late, what happens is the doctor inadvertently, or the team member inadvertently, relays certain PHI information, personal healthcare information, which is a disaster, because then you've got HHS, and that whole arena coming in with complaints. And if you ever have dealt with an HHS complaint, it's a nasty beast. It really is a nasty beast. So you have those where they take it personally, they fly off the handle, they say I, we, those kind of things. We don't do it. Here's what we did. Jay never came back for appointments, and there's too much information being revealed in these reviews. So really, we tell our guys, look, you got to take a step back. If you respond to it that second, that day, you're going to create a lot of problems. So, and our doctor's like, I can't let this go on. But what happens is when you take on a negative patient review, you're going to lose. So what happens is, and I mean this with all sincerity, like if you got a dentist in Georgia that has a negative review, and all of a sudden he starts feeding that frenzy with, I did not, here's what happened, those kind of things. And that happens. You got people that have nothing better to do, that have no idea who this doctor is, will join in that conversation and say, yeah, he's a butcher. Yeah, he did this wrong.
Wow.
He did. And it's a cottage industry. So again, you're in Georgia and you got people, Topeka, Kansas, that are saying, yeah, he what a lousy doctor he is, and he shouldn't even be practicing. He should lose his license. And that person, Topeka, Kansas, has never been out of Kansas. And it becomes, and then you got, instead of one negative response, you've got 75 or 100 negative responses, because now everyone's dogging you who's never met you. And it's a feeding frenzy. So we always say, look, take a step back. What went wrong? Evaluate it. And how do you respond to it? You never take it head on. You do a very generic, I love my patients. I love the community. We have state-of-the-art facilities. And that's how, and you let it go. And you have that one corporate response and it's dead. But what happens is if you keep going back and back and responding, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get a letter from the government. And I'll assure you that even if it's deleted, the people that are posting these are taking pictures of the screens, because that's what happened, that we're still working with on the case.
Oh, interesting. I read a lot of reviews when I'm trying a new restaurant, because I'm pretty picky about food. But, sometimes I'll see those. It sounds really professional from my perspective. I'd love to get yours. But they'll say something like, thank you so much for coming in that day. We are so sorry to hear about this experience. Please reach out to us at this number. We'd like to get this corrected, or we'd like to learn more about how we can make this right. But it's really, it goes into no detail about what happened. There's no admission. It's just, we see your review. We'd like to talk to you. What are your thoughts on something like that?
I would keep that offline. From a legal standpoint,
Okay.
I keep it offline, because what happens is when you engage that kind of conversation, you're going to slip about something. You're going to say something you shouldn't. You're going to let something inadvertently regarding PHI slip in there. So we say, keep it offline, make a phone call. You got to be careful with text messages. You got to be careful with email, because what you post, what you send to them, could inadvertently go on the internet because someone is really hacked. So,
Interesting.
So when you write these emails and text messages, which I really don't like to do once you get to that stage, assume it's going to go on the internet. So we always say, get on the phone, call them, never say you're sorry, never say, because assume your conversations are recorded, which they are.
Right. So your recommendation, you get a bad review, don't post anything. Just give them a call.
Now, no, I say you got to, I think from a legal standpoint, you got to respond to it. But there's ways to respond to it where you say nothing about what was treated and about everything. You say nothing about treatment or about this person, but you talk about your practice, how great it is, how much you love the community with your state-of-the-art equipment. I got $100,000, beam in there. And so you approach it from a totally different standpoint. And it's like a press release of how good your practice is. And you mentioned nothing about, the individual or the treatment. So,
okay.
It's
cool.
It's hard. It's really hard. Then we always say, from a clinical standpoint, use your records as a defense for malpractice. And our doctors don't do that. So if you take a look at, if you note the patient's condition, you note the progress notes, our doctors don't utilize consent forms. Our doctors think that a treatment plan is a consent form. A consent form is nowhere, a treatment plan is never and never will be a consent form. But our doctors think it is. So the treatment plan outlines, what you're going to do, the cost. That's really about it. But you get an informed consent form, it tells you what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and every risk that's possible, including death and everything, even a root canal, as to what can happen. So that's a huge issue where our doctors don't use their records as a defense to any kind of malpractice claims. But yeah, we have doctors that we have some of the best doctors in the country, and they don't use informed consent forms. Wow. Everything should be an informed consent form. So clinical, they got some work too. but it's, you know how it is. It's the little things, and you see it all the time in what you do. There's the little things that add up to the big problems. So
right. And I think more than anything, it's not just about knowing what to do and what not to do. It's about personifying that and being that every single day. And so having these systems in place, like you're talking about, and having your experts in tow is going to be so important, so that you're not trying to figure it all out and missing a whole bunch of steps along the way, inadvertently usually. But
well, I'm sure with what you do with your clients, and I have no doubt that a lot of times they will call you before they do anything, and they probably should. You're the person that's in there. You know what they're doing. You got the enormous gravitas to figure that out, and they should be calling you beforehand. So it's just getting your people involved early before before the fire truck comes. So. But, yeah.
Right. And it's far less intense, I think, to, give your attorney a call and just run something by them, or, shoot them an email. Could you read this through for me? Than, hey, here's the mess we're in because I didn't make that call or didn't ask you to read this through for me.
I got, I'm sitting there snickering because we get calls. We get calls from the doctors where they're still in the chair. The patients are still in the chair. Like, hey, Stuart, damn, I did this, I did that. They're under sedation. I got about 15, 20 minutes. What do you think I should do? Or you call the doctor and they're in the middle of of a procedure. I'm like, why are you talking to me? You hear drills in the background. I'm like, hang up the phone. Do not talk to your lawyer while you're drilling and filling. So it's
Wow.
it's
That is
interesting.
so fun. Well, they're trying though. It's a step in the right
I
direction,
know.
right? Getting you involved.
It's like it's like you got it's flattering you got that kind of access, but you're not helping the guy in the chair at all. You're just not helping
Right.
him at all. So I don't know. But sometimes they're easy to get hold of, and sometimes they're not. So just depends what they're doing. But yeah, we'll talk to them and all sorts. So
That's hilarious.
we just take them how we get them.
Yeah. Well, you do have to respect the effort involved, though, right?
Oh, no doubt, man. They go the extra mile, but yeah, you talk about access to people. That's fantastic. But yeah, we talked about the HR and the clinical side, and it's just the little things, and you know how it is. You got clients who don't even sometimes listen to your little advice. Nevertheless, then they got bigger problems. So that's true. We see the same thing on our end. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Right.
So.
Well, I love it. Well, was there something else that you wanted to add to this conversation before?
Oh my gosh! I mean, I think really between the HR and the clinical, I think we hit all the good topics, and unless you want to go till 5, then that's a whole nother story. That's another 5 hours.
What I am going to be looking for is that article that you said you guys are putting out. So you said it's about to come out, and is that going to be on your website?
It will go on our website, and it will go on through our newsletters for email. So yeah, a lot of things that we put through our emails on our Advisor Insight newsletters and podcasts. We do a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That you were on.
Love your podcast. Yes.
Yeah, you just amazing job. You did a great job. You're just you just remember my ratings go up even higher right there. So
well, you're very kind. Thank you. But just give us a rundown. So give us a website, podcast, how we can get in touch with you. People are going to want to know more. How did they do that?
Yeah, Stuart Oberman. Stuart Stuart at obermanlaw.com. Website is obermanlaw.com, OBERMAN law.com. We have Advisory Insights podcast. We put out a podcast probably once a week that covers really about everything. And before they go anywhere, they need to get to yours first, and then start at the top, then work down. That's where we go.
Well, thank you, Stuart.
So no, it's great. It is. I watch your stuff, and you are fantastic at what you do, and the podcast. It's just a privilege to be on here. So I really appreciate it. I really do.
Well, I feel fortunate to know you as well. It's always a joy to be very connected with people who are all trying to move in the same direction, which is to help this industry grow and develop and do the amazing things that I know we can do as long as we've got everybody on the same team. So
yeah, that's a great team. So thank you. You just do a great job, and I just love your podcast. So
thank you. Well, thank you for being on it today. It was so good having you.
You are quite welcome. You're quite welcome.
All right.
Have a great day.